Hey there, Virgo. I'm back and here. So I'm doing a reading for you. These are timeless readings for really whoever finds it, but I am titling it a Virgo reading, thinking of it from that perspective. So thanks for joining me. Let's see what's going on. Really positive reading so far. Wow. Um,
Something broke in you, didn't it? And now you're experiencing the aftermath walls where there used to be openness, caution where there used to be ease. And somewhere in your orbit, someone is carrying the weight of knowing they're responsible for that shift. Let me share what I'm perceiving in the emotional climate surrounding you right now. The first thing surfacing is this fracture you might be living with in how you relate to trust itself. You could be experiencing yourself as fundamentally changed by something that happened, betrayal, deception, carelessness with your heart, and that change isn't just about one person or one situation. You might be noticing that your baseline has shifted, that your default setting has moved from believing people to questioning them, from extending benefit of doubt to requiring proof. And you're navigating a world that feels less safe because someone showed you it isn't. Here's what you could be observing in your internal landscape. You might be catching yourself second guessing gestures that used to feel straightforward, analyzing words for hidden meanings, bracing for disappointment, even in moments that appear genuine. You could be experiencing hypervigilance in relationships, scanning for early warning signs, keeping escape routes visible. You might be noticing that you're protecting yourself in ways you never needed to before. And while these defenses make sense given what you've survived, they're also exhausting you because staying guarded requires constant energy. What's rippling through the relational sphere around you is that you could be sensing remorse emanating from someone's direction. You might be picking up on energy that feels heavy with regret, with the discomfort of someone who's recognized the damage they caused. You could be experiencing attempts at contact that seem to carry apology underneath whatever surface excuse is being offered. And you're navigating whether to acknowledge what you're sensing or maintain the distance you've needed to rebuild yourself. This reflection invites you to consider what you lost when you stopped being able to trust easily, and whether the person who caused that loss understands the full scope of what they took from you. You might be noticing that someone who hurt you is showing up differently now. You could be observing more careful communication, more respectful boundaries, gestures that seem designed to demonstrate change or growth. You might be picking up on someone who's trying to prove through action that they understand the magnitude of their mistake. But you're also aware that changed behavior now doesn't erase what happened then, doesn't automatically restore what was shattered. What's becoming apparent in the debris field of what occurred is that you could be dealing with lasting impact that goes beyond the initial wound. You might be experiencing consequences that continue to unfold, difficulty being vulnerable with new people, reluctance to believe good news, cynicism creeping into spaces that used to hold optimism. You could be noticing that what one person did has affected how you show up everywhere with everyone, and that collateral damage is part of what makes the original harm so significant. What's particularly complex about what I'm witnessing is that you might be experiencing conflicting responses to sensing someone's guilt. Part of you could feel validation finally, recognition of the harm done, acknowledgement that you weren't overreacting or being too sensitive. But another part of you might feel nothing, or anger that guilt comes now when you needed accountability then, or exhaustion at the idea of managing someone else's discomfort about hurting you. And sorting through these competing reactions while trying to protect your still healing wounds is demanding work. Um, you might be picking up on someone who wants forgiveness but hasn't fully earned it. You could be sensing pressure to move on, to let go, to stop dwelling on the past pressure that might come directly from the person who hurt you or from people around you who are uncomfortable with your ongoing wariness. You might be experiencing the message that your continued lack of trust is somehow the problem now, as if the responsibility for restoring what was broken belongs to you rather than to the person who broke it. What's threading through the atmosphere is that you could be dealing with someone who understands intellectually that they caused harm, but may not grasp the depth of the repair work you've had to do. You might be sensing remorse that's focused on how their actions reflected on them, guilt about being that kind of person, rather than genuine reckoning with what you endured as a result of their choices. You could be picking up on self-focused regret that wants absolution more than it wants your actual healing is less than #0. 5 is greater than, and that distinction matters enormously in whether their guilt serves any productive purpose. This reflection invites you to consider whether you're experiencing someone's remorse as genuine concern for you or as discomfort with their own self-image, and what that tells you about whether they're capable of the kind of accountability that could actually matter. You might be noticing that your inability to trust isn't a choice you're making to punish anyone. You could be experiencing it as an automatic response, a protective mechanism your system activated without your conscious input. You might be observing that you want to trust, that you miss the ease of taking people at their word, that you're frustrated with your own suspicion. But knowing you'd prefer to be different doesn't give you access to flip a switch and become who you were before you learned what you now know. What's also surfacing is that you could be dealing with questions about what restoration would even look like. You might be asking yourself whether trust, once shattered this completely, can actually be rebuilt, or whether the best you can hope for is building something new with different people. You could be wondering if the person who broke your trust deserves opportunity to repair it, or if that opportunity is a gift you're not obligated to give. You might be sitting with uncertainty about whether forgiveness requires reconciliation, whether you can release resentment for your own peace while still maintaining boundaries that keep you safe from repeated harm. The emotional weather suggests you might be experiencing grief for who you used to be. You could be mourning the version of yourself who believed people when they made promises, who didn't automatically scan for exits, who could receive love without bracing for betrayal. You might be recognizing that innocence, once lost, doesn't return, and while wisdom has value, you trade some of that wisdom for the lightness you carried. Before you understood how carelessly people can damage what they claim to cherish. What's pulsing through the relational debris is that you could be picking up on someone who wants to be let off the hook. You might be sensing energy that's ready for you to be over it, that's impatient with your healing timeline, that interprets your continued guardedness as unforgiveness rather than as appropriate protection. You could be experiencing pressure to perform recovery you haven't completed, to demonstrate trust you don't feel, and resisting that pressure while already carrying the burden of repair is adding insult to injury. This reflection invites you to consider what you actually need in order to begin trusting again, not just this person, but anyone, and whether you're giving yourself permission to require those needs be met before you lower your defenses. You might be noticing that some people in your sphere don't understand why you're still affected. You could be experiencing messages that you should be over it by now, that holding on to hurt is only harming you, that the person who wronged you has changed and you're being stubborn or vindictive by not acknowledging that change. You might be picking up on impatience with your process is less than #0, 5 hashes greater than, and that impatience often comes from people who haven't had their foundation cracked the way yours was, who don't understand that healing from betrayal isn't linear or quick. What I'm witnessing in the architecture of your current reality is that you could be rebuilding trust muscle by muscle, interaction by interaction. You might be practicing with small risks, sharing something minor and seeing if it's honored, testing someone's consistency over time, allowing yourself to hope while also watching carefully. You could be experiencing the painstaking work of learning to trust your own judgment again after it failed you so catastrophically. Because part of what broke wasn't just faith in others, but faith in your ability to discern who's safe. The resonance around someone's guilt suggests you might be dealing with someone who's recognized the pattern they were part of. You could be picking up on someone who's seeing clearly now how their actions aligned with ways others have hurt you before, how they became another data point in a story you didn't want confirmed. You might be sensing someone who understands they weren't just one mistake, but part of a larger wound. And whether that understanding translates into meaningful amends or just more sophisticated guilt is something you're probably evaluating carefully. What's also coming through is that you could be experiencing your lack of trust as something others find inconvenient but you find necessary. You might be aware that your caution makes relationships more difficult, that it creates distance, that frustrates people who want closeness with you. You could be sensing that your self-protection is interpreted as coldness, your boundaries as rejection, but you're also understanding that convenience for others can't be your priority, that trusting before you're ready, before safety has been demonstrated, would be betraying yourself in service of making others comfortable. This reflection invites you to consider what evidence you'd need to see and for how long before you could consider letting someone who broke your trust have access to you again, if that's even something you want. You might be noticing that guilt from someone who hurt you doesn't obligate you to anything. You could be experiencing their discomfort with what they did and recognizing that while you can witness it, you don't have to relieve it. You might be understanding that someone feeling bad about hurting you is the bare minimum, not a reason to abandon the boundaries you've needed to establish. And holding that line while someone else processes their remorse requires you to prioritize your healing over their comfort in ways that might feel selfish but are actually essential. What's becoming visible in how you're showing up is that you could be discovering strength you didn't know you had. You might be experiencing yourself as more discerning, more boundaried, more willing to walk away from situations that don't serve you. You could be noticing that while you've lost the ability to trust easily, you've gained the ability to trust selectively to identify who's actually earned access to your inner world. And while this trade-off wasn't one you would have chosen, there's power in the person you're becoming through surviving what broke you. The blueprint I'm reading suggests you might be dealing with a long road back to anything resembling your former openness. You could be accepting that you may never fully return to who you were, that some changes are permanent. You might be grieving that reality while also beginning to appreciate the ways your new wariness serves you, protects you, honors the lessons you've learned. And this integration of old and new versions of yourself is the actual work of healing, not pretending the wound never happened. So, as you navigate this terrain where someone's guilt meets your justified guardedness, give yourself permission to feel whatever you feel. You might be experiencing anger, indifference, curiosity about whether they've actually changed, desire for reconciliation, or fierce commitment to keeping them at distance. All of these responses are legitimate, and you don't owe anyone a particular emotional posture just because they've recognized they're wrong. Trust will return when it returns, if it returns. You might be rebuilding it gradually with people who demonstrate over time that they're safe. You could be discovering that some doors, once closed, stay closed, and that's not failure, that's wisdom. What someone did to you changed you. Their guilt about that doesn't change you back. Only time, safety, and your own deliberate healing work can do that. And you get to set the pace. You get to decide who, if anyone, earns their way back into your trust. And you get to protect yourself without apology while you figure out what comes next.